Hey, look at that, Wendy. We're live.
We are.
Hey, folks, this is just a little bit of a pre-show before we do the opening credits. The show starts officially at 3 minutes after 4 o'clock my time, 10:03 your time over in Great Britain. And depending on where you are in the States, Eastern time, it'll be 5:03 Central, where I am 4:03, 3:03 Mountain time, 2:03 Left Coast time. And something like, I don't know, midnight tomorrow in Australia. So there you go. So we got about 30 seconds, and then we're going to go dark. Don't let that fool you. We're just going live on the radio stream to pick up the stream, and then the credits will start. How you doing over there, Wendy? How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
You're looking pretty fine, Scotty.
Don't coming from you, that means something.
Yeah, but we're
okay, here we go. We got to go out. I got to remove us both, so we'll be right back. Stand by. Hey, folks, how you doing? It is Wednesday. It's Tuesday. Wow, I almost got a day ahead of myself. It's Tuesday, and Wendy and I are coming to you, Robertson, right here on the Subspace Radio Network, and that is subspace.radio if you just want to hear us in audio, or you can come over to several different places on Facebook. You can go to my Facebook page, which is, I think, just Mr. Scotty Roberts. It's Mr. all spelled out. You can go to the Subspace Radio page. You can go to Robertson, and it's just Roberts N. Robertson, I think is the way you do it over on Facebook. And you can see us in the video simulcast or come to the best place, which is the YouTube channel. And right now we don't have our own YouTube channel. We're just using mine. So it's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. Hard to forget with all the Scotty Roberts things going around.
Robertson, yes.
Yes. And how are you doing today, Wendy? How you doing?
How you doing? Thank you. And glad to be here and the show number 3.
Show number 3. We've made it to number 3. One of these days it'll be show 300. So
yeah, hopefully.
That's when we're going several days a week and several hours a day.
Yes. Yes.
Think you could do that? You think you would like doing a show from say, boy, our time zones really kill us, don't they? Because I am 6 hours behind you, and so where it is 10 p.m. there in London and Great Britain, here it is 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and so if we started doing, say, a 2-hour show, we could go from 4 to 6 here, 10 to midnight there.
We could do an all-nighter, honey.
There, you could go all night long.
Maybe. It worked for Lionel Richie.
For that. So, but tonight, and by the way, hey to everybody over in the chat room. I'm looking over here because my chat room lines up over there on my screen. Who have we got? Let's just say a quick hello to everybody. Steve Clark, he's in Kansas. Good to see you, Steve. We've got Faceless Mao 5. I forget where you're from, but welcome to the show. Michelle Kenham Free. And we always say freedom. And she is up here in Wisconsin somewhere. And Kendall Blanchard, he's down in Florida. Is that how they say it in Florida? Florida. Or they say that out east. And who else we got so far over here in the chat room? We got Spirit Heart Gods and Goddesses. That's Cordia. And Rudy Kessler from down in Texas. And so good to see you all. And glad to have you here. So, Wendy, how has your day been? It's already nighttime there. So you've already had a whole day?
Nearer the bewitching hour as we speak. It's crawling ahead of me. So Tuesday is beckoning already to me.
All right.
Yeah. So you just got me for a little while.
Just a little while. Well, I'll exploit you the best I can for the little while I have you. Oh, and I have to say, because you've got another husband, a professional husband, I just have to say hey to Mark.
Hi, Mark. Hi, hubby one.
Obi-Wan.
Hubby
Obi-Wan,
one.
you have taught her well.
Yeah.
I wish I had that bassy voice. So I'm getting a little feedback from you, Wendy. Just a little tech. I'm hearing myself echoing.
Ooh.
So that might be up on the show. So if you've got a earbud or can bring your internal sound down a little bit and still hear me.
Is that better?
I'll just talk louder.
You just talk over me.
All right. I'll try not to do that. Some people say I talk too much when you're on. I forget that because, when I do radio, I try to make sure I don't have any dead space.
Yeah.
So I've developed this thing over the years of just talking all the time. So now, let's move on from that.
Let's move on.
We've got an interesting topic tonight, I think. And Wendy, why don't you introduce this topic? Since I've introduced the show, let everybody know what we're talking about.
Well, I think it's a subject that everybody has either had done to them or have done in their lifetime. And we've all had it done or done it for various reasons. And that is being ghosted or ghosted someone. And it's a very difficult thing to talk about sometimes because, to be honest, it affects us all differently. But yes, that's the subject. And also the attachment styles. We're going to be looking at that again, I know, but it's the attachment styles.
And if anybody doesn't know what ghosting is, Steve Clark mentioned in the comments that the echo just started. I think I went and I adjusted your mic because I wasn't hearing you as loud in here, and that's what started the echo.
Is it gone now?
I think. So hopefully it's not playing now. Mm-hmm. I don't hear anything coming back.
That's
so if anybody doesn't know what ghosting is, raise your hand. I've been told by people that are you ghosting me? I first learned of it in social media. Because somebody will write you and you're like, oh, I don't have time for that person. And we've all done it. You've ever done why did I friend that person? Because they're a pain in the ass, or they're sending me videos every 20 minutes or something, and you just stop responding. That's ghosting someone. Now, sometimes I ghost people inadvertently, unawares. I just don't have time to respond. And do you know how many requests I get every week of people saying, hey, what's your opinion on this thing? It's either political or archaeological or paranormal or something like that. And I just don't have time.
Like, I've got a life.
And so many times I tell people I don't have time. So this is what I want us to start talking about, is this whole ghosting thing, because you can ghost people by ignoring them, but ghosting goes far beyond social media.
Yeah.
Where else do you think that this could affect us, Wendy?
I mean, this is a word that's come out really recently, in the last couple of years. I've been ghosted, and obviously disappearance. See, you can't, 1 minute there, next minute they're gone. And I think for all of us, I don't know which one of us could say we haven't done it or haven't experienced it, but sometimes it can happen in work. It can happen in online, dating and relationship, friendship, and it can even happen in your family and within a marriage as well. And
Yes.
it comes across quite a few.
Dave sends me video. Uncle Dave sends me videos all day long, every day. And I don't respond because it's like, either I didn't watch it or I don't have time to talk. I just give him a thumbs up or something. And so there it is, Dave. No, I'm not really ghosting you. I'm just not answering.
But I also think in a relationship, whatever the relationship is, whether it's family or whatever, you can be with someone, you can still be with someone, and they ghost you. They react to you a certain way where you feel, wow. And some of the symptoms of being ghosted, like for instance, let's look at first someone who's been ghosted. And I've asked a few people their experiences today, and I've had it done myself. And I've also done it myself because, sometimes you have to. We'll get to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But the most common feelings are shock, really, shock and disbelief, confused, like, why? Why have you done that? Being angry and pissed off, like, really? And also frustrated, very frustrated because you're hitting a brick wall. You cannot reach that person. And the other thing as well is like, what did I do? Like, what did I do?
Yes.
What did I say? And it starts to play with your head. And then you've got feelings of damaging your confidence, your self-worth, feeling rejected. That's the biggest thing, feeling rejected. Right. And I think you also get no closure. And you can overanalyze and go, what?
Right.
And then it's also very, a couple of friends said to me today, they felt it was rude and it was insensitive. The question of why, and it stayed with them. It stayed with them and it haunted them, using the word ghosts, because then they would meet someone else and get involved or have another friendship or something and think, are they going to do it to me as well? And I think that, it's a very painful thing to happen. I mean, let's give a scenario. You have a friendship and you've known them for some time and you've been really good friends and you've spent time together talking about everything in life, and all of a sudden they just disappear. And you're ringing them and you're messaging them and they're gone. And it brings apparently Steve wants you to check your text messages, apparently.
I saw that. Tough to do during the show, Steve, but if it's important for the show, I'll go look at it.
It just leaves you feeling, what did I not mean anything? Did this friendship not mean anything to you? Could you not say it to me? That's just one scenario. Then you have, say you're online and you're talking to someone either through dating or social media. Mm-hmm. And the next minute, they're really into you. They're like, really coming on strong. They're really into you. I want, blah, 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 blah. And the next minute, disappeared. You're blocked on WhatsApp. You've disappeared from Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat or whatever you want to say. And you're like, but I thought they were really into me. And so the next time someone comes across you and you're like, oh, they seem very nice. They seem into me. You're thinking, oh my God, is this going to happen to me again? So it becomes very, very damaging. And then at work, you could be talking to someone at work. You could have a good relationship with somebody at work. And the next minute you come in and they are treating you like you don't exist, like you're nothing to them. And there's an atmosphere at work and you're like, why are you doing this to me? And then we come to the one when you're in a relationship with someone and you are rejected on a regular basis, whether it be your feelings, your thoughts, your actions, your advances, your affections, and you're blanked. There's no explanation. They're just like blah, 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 blah. There's nothing. There's not even that. And it leaves you feeling like, first of all, the biggest feeling it leaves you is rejection. Why? Why can't you talk to me about this? Why do you have to do this? Why do you, why? And you wonder on the side of the person that's ghosted you, why have they ghosted me? Why? Why have they found it so difficult to talk to me or to write it down or to whatever? And maybe, you know, some of the questions I asked that today to people, and they said because it could be because it's the coward's way. Using certain scenarios, it's the coward's way. They don't want to face the situation. They don't want to face the subject. They haven't got the, pardon my French, the balls to actually face you and
That's
say,
French.
Oh yeah, to say, you know, this is how I feel. It's such a coward's way to block you, whether it's right in front of your face and you're trying to talk to that person and they're just ignoring you, or whether it be online through a phone call or anything else. And it seems in this day and age, it's easier to cut you off than actually stand up and take responsibility and explain your way out or deal with it head on. And sometimes you're dealing with people who are emotionally damaged and they don't know how to deal with this. They don't know how to deal with the situation, regardless of what the situation is. They're emotionally damaged.
Can I throw a couple thoughts in on that? I know that there's this thing out there. It's called attachment theory. And this is where all of this stuff about ghosting really fits under this umbrella.
Yeah.
And it's the study of how people bond in all different kinds of intimate relationships.
Yeah.
And it studies confirm how consistently or inconsistently available get this, a child's parents are in their formative years directly affects the level to which they'll be comfortable with intimacy as adults. And now I'm never one for camping out. Now, to find the roots of the reasons we do things and the way we act, the way we treat other people, it can generally always go back to something in our distant past.
Yes.
Generally our childhood or our formative years or our young adulthood, mistakes we've made, things that have been done to us, and so on. When you look at, just to use an example, kids that have been abused are usually kids that have, you can pull out a bullet point list of traits that they have and attributes they have that they don't realize they have unless somebody tells them or helps them through that. And so when you've got somebody or something that goes all the way back to those formative years, there is this, I know I've got it. I know other people that have it. Because I've got it, I can see it in other people. But there's this thing I've tried to do, and that's try to break the chain with the past. The past is the past. I cannot change it. And I never will say, even though I recognize issues that I have in my relationships, in my life, I know where they come from. I know what the source point is. But to dwell in that and live in that source point is what too many people do. And they never let it go. They never release it. It stays part of who they are. That's something you have to, that this person who does these kinds of things, which I haven't even gotten to the different styles, but the people who do these things, they're trapped in something that many times some of them don't even realize they do. And then when it's pointed out, they make excuses for it or they whatever. And when they finally learn about why they act the way they act, some of them either camp there the rest of their lives, or they say that campground is shut down and I'm moving forward. It's a memory now. It's not an active part of how I conduct myself. And so our particular attachment style, all of us, yours, mine, everybody listening, it's based on what that level of intimacy was in our past and what we are looking for it to be and how we learned how to express our intimacy. I used to have, back in a former marriage, I had a counselor once said to me, "That's great. Everything you've told me is great. The emotions are great and all of that, but tell me how that makes you feel. Tell me how that makes you feel." And I say, I can't attach to that. I don't know what, I've got a phone call on my phone and my child. Sorry, folks. If you've ever watched my show, the Intrepid radio program, you know my children just walk in. Thank you. I can't take that right now because I'm on air. Okay, talk to mom, please.
I think
So,
you picked up a good point there, because
sorry about that.
Freud came up with said that the first person we ever love in our life as a woman is our father, and the same with a guy is a mother. They can affect our future relationships. Also, it can also be like trauma as a child, but also if you didn't have trauma as a child, but you didn't have a close relationship with your mom or your dad or whatever, then it comes like, how do you react? How do you respond? But I think also it's about being responsible and taking responsibility for your actions. And on our first show, number 1, we talked about how the words emotionally unavailable. And I think these people crave it. And then at the same time, you're right, that's a very good word. Codependent is a very, very important word. But also,
Wendy, I'm going to turn this over to you for a minute. I apparently have something I have to tend to.
No worries, no worries.
So if we were just doing audio, you wouldn't hear that. But
okay.
I'm going to go mute and I'm going to bring you up.
Okay. If you've had trauma in your life, or you've had people around you that are traumatic in your early life, this can affect you. But I wonder just how many people in the comments now, and I'm just reading them down while Scotty's gone. Let me just read some of them. Michelle writes about deep-rooted fears. You're absolutely right. Fear, what is it? What I always said about fear? False evidence appearing real. And it basically means our fears are sometimes so big. I can't face this. I can't talk about this. I can't do this. So what they tend to do is just go, put the wall up, block you out, can't deal with it. And it's a real coward's way. Steve says, I've learned a long time ago, I must put my glasses on 1 sec. I learned a long time ago to enjoy being alone because of the past. And that's great. But at the same time, Steve, we all deserve to have someone really, really special in our life. And it's a shame that the past scars us so that we now become, I don't want to bring anyone close because I don't want to get hurt for it again. Pearson, a lot of the time people that want to help people but are not able harm people. You're right, exactly. Everybody's different. I'm just trying to read all these lovely comments that people have written. Codependent. I think all of us at one point in our life have had a codependent relationship or friendship, and sometimes we don't even know we're in one. I was in a relationship myself, and literally didn't even know it was a toxic one until a friend of mine pointed out, you're in a toxic relationship. And I was like, really? Are you okay? You're back now? Can't hear you.
I had to turn down the mic because it picks me up, even though, because we're broadcasting, it picks me up. Sorry, folks. Sorry, Wendy. We have a very sick animal that my wife is at the vet with him right now, and she was just calling to tell me she forgot I was doing radio. And so we've got an old cat with pancreatitis, we just found out. So they said he could live a good long time, but we have to get him on the right diet for that specifically. So sorry for that. Momentary. I call them on my show. I call them familial interruptions because they happen so often.
I was just taking some of the comments, and I was talking to the lovely Steve, and he was saying that he's been on his own a long time. He lost his lovely wife, and now I'm so sorry to hear about your granddaughter last Thursday, Steve. Sending all our best to you. It's really painful. I mean, I'll give you an example of my life, and then Scotty can give one about being ghosted. So I met somebody, and lovely person. Went out for a lovely meal, got on incredibly well with them, really wanted to see me again, booked a day to see it, and then all the way up to it, I'm going to see you, we're going to see you, we're going to see you, going to see you, and then the next thing, text message wasn't read, no response, nothing, not blocked, just not answered, just not there. It's like, hello, are you still there? And you're like, why? why would you do that? Why would you just not say, listen, it's not for me, or I have this reason, or I can't do it? Why would you do that? It's hurtful and it's painful. And it's like, it's cowardly.
It
And
is.
at our age as well, without giving our age away, don't you think we've learned anything in life which is to actually face people head on and deal with it? Unless these are the times when you should go someone, if it's disrespectful, if they are toxic, if they are creepy, if they are in any way making you feel incredibly uncomfortable, and it's maybe overly sexual and you or something, you don't want to do it, then there are times, or if they're violence, or if there's anything like that, then put down the shutters. So
Something I learned a very long time ago in my former life as a seminarian and a minister. We're talking 35 years ago. And I was in ministry, and there was one thing I learned that was biblical, but I think the principle spills over so well.
Yeah.
And we had this saying that we took out of biblical text, but applied it to a lot of different things. And that was, let your yes be yes and your no be no.
Absolutely.
And we added to that, always speak the truth in love. Now, that doesn't mean it could be, I'm not in love with you or that person. And that doesn't mean I can't speak the truth in love to them. Now, that sounds a little sappy when you bring it into the whole New Age thing. And we're not talking about New Ageism here. This stuff was written thousands of years ago. So it's the idea of saying, if I'm going to speak to you, even if it's negative, I have to let my yes be yes, my no be no, and I have to speak the truth in a loving or a for me, a gentlemanly, for a woman, ladylike, however you want to put it. We have to speak in those terms. Now, sometimes there's the negative side of that. I've had my situations like you've had, situations I've had. I've had relationships where you test them out and you go, whoa, that I have got to be far away from that. That is like nigh unto demonic. Let me find my crucifix to hold up. And you say, look, we're done. What did Steve Martin, the comedian, say? I break with thee, I break with thee, I break with thee. And he did other things too. So, but I've tried to really adopt that pattern in all walks of life. Relationship. And of course, when you're in a relationship, that is tougher though, isn't it? Sometimes it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Because you want to be straightforward, but you don't need to be blunt. It's, it's like, asking, do these jeans make my ass look fat? Well, if I was to speak the truth, it's your ass that make the jeans look fat. But, that's, you can speak truth and be bitterly cruel, or you can speak truth and be soft and gentle and speak the truth in love. Now, people, I think, who ghost other people, they've obviously got these hang-ups, and something, I'll jump into this for just a second because I left you on the line all by yourself. Not that you can't handle yourself, but there's these 4 styles. There's of attachment. There's secure, there's anxious, there's avoidance, and then there's the fearful avoidant. And the anxious and the avoidant are the dominant insecure types, with fearful avoidant being less common mix of the two, but it exists. So secure people had consistently available parents. Anxious and avoidant parents did not. And if you know anything about the people that you've experienced that have ghosted you in one form or another, you will find that most of them have attachment issues all the way around.
Yes.
And there's a part of you that wants to go, I'm so compassionate and so loving. I understand why you ghosted me. I get it. But you're also a dick. You want to just lay it all out there. So I think that things I know that have happened to you, things you know that have happened to me, and it doesn't just happen in, as we mentioned just a little bit, you mentioned this a little earlier, it doesn't just happen in those casual, hey, I'm getting to know you type relationships. It happens in marriages.
Yes.
It happens in long-term relationships,
Yes.
long-term friendships. Why is my, you look up and you go, I haven't heard from my friend Rob in 3 months. I wonder what's up.
Yep.
And why haven't I thought to call him? And you call him, and then you find out, there's a problem.
I think
And
Michelle just wrote a very good comment. She said, hurt people,
hurt
and that's
people, hurt
very
people.
true. Damaged people. And remember, you and I talked about this in our first show. We said the people that hurt us, they move on and they leave it behind. They don't carry it on. We carry it on. And there's also another one that I didn't mention, which I want to just quickly say. Sometimes people are in relationships and they get bored. Their partner's away working, things are bad in the relationship. Maybe they're just looking for a bit of excitement on the side. And I was chatting to someone today who told me that, he could see it as a cycle. They would be in touch and it would be all over them for 2 weeks or they would be all over them. And then they would just disappear, completely disappear. And then they would be back. And then they would come and then they would go again. And it's like, are they married? Do they have a partner? Is this something they do for excitement on the side, which is incredibly damaging to someone? Because how are you supposed to ever trust anyone ever again? And it's also, if you're married to someone, and I can speak from this because I have had experience. When I was married, there were other messages being sent to other people from my husband, and he was making out that he was single or separated. And they didn't know that. They didn't know anything. They didn't know anything about being any different. And I found this later on down the line. Now, to all those people, when they discovered that he actually had a marriage and had a wife, they were either like, wow, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you just be honest? People have a problem. They need, and sometimes it's their reasons for needing reassurance or, am I still wanted? Does it give them a boost? But to the people that they're doing it to, it damages them. It leaves the scars and demons. How do you ever trust anyone again? And that's why ghosting has become so annoying in all our lives, because it's like, when did we stop being a nation of people who couldn't face each other and tell each other face to face, or either on the phone or whatever, and just say, this is how it is?
And you're absolutely right. That's what people do. And even more subtle and maybe more damaging is when this happens, not just in casual relationships that are starting to come together and they find out and one person bolts. And usually the guy, I will say, I'm a guy, but I'll admit it's usually the guy that's like, ho, hey, too hot, too fast. I don't want to get married. I don't want a relationship. I'm going to go now. Bye. See ya. But they don't say got to go. Bye. See ya. They just go, call you tomorrow. And you don't hear from them ever again.
Or you do hear from them again, and it's weeks and months down the line, and you're like,
yeah. I haven't. You know what I think of people that do that, guys that do that, especially because I'm a guy. It's like, well, I've kind of run out of people to have sex with this weekend. Maybe I'll call back I wonder if she shouldn't be mad. I'll just turn up the charm and, I don't really want her in my life, but boy, I could sure use the sex. That's the drive that you see in a lot of guys. And that's no big secret. I think everybody kind of knows that.
And women are just as bad. I mean, from a guy's point of view, there are women out there who actually are not helping the situation, because the gentleman I spoke to today, he was saying exactly the same thing. they come on strong and they want all the, they come and say all the right things, and then they just disappear, and then they turn up again, and then it's like, where
Right.
were you? I mean, I think that, it's very scary that what are we doing to each other?
Yeah. And I know husbands and wives, I know people intimately that have this. I was going to talk about this pernicious kind of ghosting that happens within
Yes.
relationships, sometimes long term relationships, sometimes long term relationships with kids in the house still.
Mhm.
And those, you'll have one party or the other
Mhm.
has decided that they either want out, or
Yeah.
and they don't want to just enact being out. They don't want to just go, okay, I got to be honest with you, I got to get out of this marriage. They don't do that, but they will ghost the person they live with. And do you know what ghosting can look like within a relationship like that? When you live in the same home, you're with the same person for, let's say you've been together 8 years, 9 years, and you're with that same person, and one of those people doesn't want to have affection, doesn't want to, it's not the touch. Every time you touch, it's like, oh, I got to go play football tonight. I can't do it right now. Can't have sex before football. See ya, honey.
Mhm.
Or whatever the excuse might be. Women can do the same thing, and there's that turning off of affection.
Yes.
And sometimes those people on the other end of that relationship will look up one day and they'll go, I'm all alone in this relationship. Who the hell am I? What happened to my marriage? What happened to my whatever? And so ghosting within close relationships happens. And I had heard one really good person put it this way recently, a Jewish man that's a friend of mine. And he said, um, he was talking about adultery and things like that in a relation. Old word. I know we don't use that word that much anymore, but let's call it affairs and things like that. He's talking about, he said, in marriages, he said, I think adultery or affairs are forgivable. You can move on from those. You can find ways to work through those if you want to. He says the one thing that kills marriages and close relationships quicker than anything else, even long term ones, is contempt.
Yes.
When you get contempt for the other person, lack of respect for the other person, what happens? They're generally people that will do the ghosting,
Yep.
are people that maybe aren't strong enough to just say, we either need to work this out, we need to go to counseling, we need to do whatever it takes, we need to join hands and let's figure this shit out.
Mhm.
Or they're people who they want out so bad, but they don't have the courage to say it. They don't have the courage to step out on their own. They don't have the courage to go get their own place or do their own thing. Or there's the court entanglement, custody battles, and
Mhm.
all of that. And that's why you see so many couples. You ever wonder about this? Why so many couples, after the kids have graduated from high school and gone off to college, oh, bang, there's a divorce. Why? Because there's nothing, the only glue to that relationship was their children. And once that was gone, and ghosting, of course, we're talking about ghosting here. So this is what a lot of people do.
You can be in
And
a relationship and feel the most loneliest ever,
yes,
even if you're surrounded by people, because the one person you want to show affection rejects you, and they don't listen to your feelings. They're not giving you the time to talk about the situation. They don't actually really give you the time that you need to sort this out. And as I said to you in
yes,
the show number one, if you care enough to get into something and you're in it for a good period of time, you should care enough to actually sort it out one way or the other. And yes, it does take a lot. I mean, I know somebody right now is going for a really tough time about they're in a relationship, and they're not sure it's the right one for them.
yeah,
And the person's lovely, really, really lovely, but they really don't they're not feeling it. There's something there that's just not, clicking. And they're like, what do I do? Like, usually I'm used to, like, dare I say it, bastards or bad people or whatever you want to say, like, so there's an issue. But this person doesn't have that. There's not that sort of issue. And I feel like I'm going to become the ghoster because I don't know what to say. I don't know how to face it head on. I feel like the biggest coward going and the rotten person going. And it's not, sometimes it isn't easy to say to someone that you care about or that you love or that you work with or that you're friends with, this is how I'm really feeling, because I do not have the gumption, the courage, or the balls, or I don't even know the words. So it's far easier to just go block.
Sure.
Than it is anything else. And what that does is it can. It just leaves maybe us feeling a bit more, oh my God, I'm relieved I've done that. But the other person's feeling like, what happened? It's far easier to say, look, this isn't working, or there's a problem. We need to sort this out and write it down, or whatever you need to do something. But I also think, like, having been ghosted, it really hurts. And I hope anybody takes anything away from this show, from both of us and what we're talking about, is that it hurts. It leaves the person thinking about, what did we do? Did we say something wrong? Or do you not like me anymore? Am I doing something that's making you feel like that?
All those questions come to mind, don't they?
Exactly. And it's
when
like,
you experience that from somebody.
It could be sorted out. I mean, we've all been with people or know people that have turned around and said, I just, I know people have had friendships and they've just said, we've grown apart. I just don't feel like we should hang out anymore. We just grown apart, which, because it hurts, right? Yeah. But I also think in a work situation as well, that is a horrible situation, because you're having to go in every day and work alongside that person, and other people could be aware of it in that environment. And you're kind of like, oh God, I feel really awkward now, because, and you're sort of sitting there thinking, I can't wait till 5 o'clock turns up. It's a really horrible thing.
Well, there's a very crass old saying that said, don't screw where you get your paycheck. Because unless you're doing it for the paycheck, I suppose there's a fine line there. But, what do you do for a living, Daddy? I'm a male gigolo. Why, son, do you ask? No, so I suppose there are those that actually do that kind of thing. But you and I'm going to go out on a branch here. This is going to sound very braggadocious or cocky, however you want to look at it, or arrogant. Some people might look at this. But when you listen to this kind of a conversation that's coming from Wendy and me, we're kids that have been around the block a few times. And so we've experienced some of this stuff. And that's the arrogant part, saying, hey, we've been around the block. I'm not saying, so trust every word that falls out of my mouth. I'm just saying we've been there. We've experienced these things. We've seen them firsthand. We've both been in counseling situations where we've seen these kinds of things happen to other people. I was in a counseling situation once 30 years ago where I was leading a group of men in a church, and the pastor kind of appointed me to this, and he said, I want you to take on the group that deals with guys in troubled marriages in our church. And I said, whoa. I said, don't ask me to do that. And he said, I think you're the perfect guy for this. And I said, well, then I will enter that room every time with waiting for the lightning bolt to fall down on top of me. But we dealt with guys that were out of love with their wives, wanted out, were screwing the secretary, doing all kinds of other things. And they were trying, some of them, I told them, you be very open and honest with me, because we aren't going to deal with this stuff if you aren't going to be honest with me. We talked about their stuff. And I had one guy in particular. He says, I've fallen out of love with my wife. Now, maybe this is more a solution. I'm getting a little bit off the topic of ghosting here, Wendy, but this guy said to me, I've fallen out of love with my wife. That's why I'm banging the secretary. And stooping the secretary, shagging the secretary, whatever vernacular you want to use. And I said, well, let's try something. Before you call it all quits, can I ask you to try something? He said, sure. I said, you say you don't love your wife anymore. And I took a piece of paper and a pen, laid it down in front of him, and I said, write out for me 15 things you would do for your wife if you did love her. If you were madly in love with this woman, what would you do for her? Oh, man, he says, that's a tough one. I said, then take your wife's face out of it for a second. A woman you loved, what would you do for her? And so he begrudgingly, as we talked and laughed and, all through this conversation, he wrote down 15 things. And he slid it over to the desk at me. And I said, okay, cool. I said, now I'm going to slide this right back the desk over to you. I said, take this list. I take 30 days before you make any decisions. Take this list home and do all of these things on this list. He says, you got to be kidding me. He says, you fooled me into this. And I said, no, I didn't. I'm asking you. You don't have to do it. I said, give it a try. And you know what? As far as I know, right now, 30 years later, they're still married. He went back and he did that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes loving a person isn't raw emotion anymore. You could say the first time the guy you're in a relationship wakes up with his stanky breath and farts in bed and scratches his balls on the way to making coffee and goes and plays a game and leaves you home and doesn't do anything, you might go, what if this is the right guy? So the emotions can go up and down.
Yes.
For a guy, he looks at his wife one morning and says, how come you don't have a rose in your teeth this morning? Because that's not natural. We do those things. So love, I've gotten in the habit a long time ago of saying love isn't always an act of the emotion, though it involves it. Passion. One of my lines that sticks out of me in the play Camelot, the musical. And yes, I like musicals. I'm not gay, but I like musicals. But in Camelot, Arthur says when he finds out Guinevere and Lancelot are in an affair.
Yes.
And he says it's called the Excalibur soliloquy, where he's talking to Excalibur before he's supposed to go knight Lancelot. And he says, there's one line he says in there. He says, what about their pain? What about their going through? Can passion be selected? And he says, by God, I will be a king and I will be a good king. And so this is his resolve. And all I'm saying with that is, it was the line, passion sometimes can't be selected, but sometimes it is. And
I think the biggest thing that I think using Arthur and Guinevere and Lancelot, rejection, like King Arthur was, she chose Lancelot, right?
She did.
And she rejected Arthur.
But she totally loved Arthur too.
She did. But she had to choose one. And it's like human beings at the core hate rejection. We hate it.
We do.
Because it brings up all our fears and triggers. What's wrong with me?
How many out there of you, by show of hands, love rejection?
Yeah, like, what's wrong with me? What have I done? And you'll go into your next situation, friendship, whatever it is, it's rejection. And it's also fear. Like, life is really short. And I always use this thing because it is. And we've all lost people that we love very much. And some have gone early before their time. And it's like, you get one go at this lifetime, one go. And we all fuck up. We all make mistakes.
Sure we do.
We all do. And it's like, we can't go back and change it. But what we can do is move forward and change it. So here's an idea. When you've got something to say to somebody, be a man, be a woman, say it to them. Don't leave them hanging in limbo.
Yeah.
Don't leave them hanging going, are we together? Are we not together? Am I still got this job? Are we still got friends? Is this still a marriage? Do you still want me? Just say it. Just come out and say
Let
it.
your yes be yes,
If
and
you
your no
don't,
be no, and speak the truth in love.
if you don't, then you're not helping. You're really not helping, because that person will. So there's as you say yourself. Thanks, Manda.
Hey, Amanda.
It's such a shame, because like my nieces are coming up. They're young, young girls. They're in their teens. They're going to go through that. I'm going to watch them go through it, and I think to myself, oh, they're going to do it or whatever. And you just think, like, it's such a shame. So rejection, and it's like not just rejection because you think, am I ugly? Am I crap in bed? Do they, whatever it is. And sometimes people project their own stuff onto you. So you think what they're doing or how they're reacting to you and how they're treating you is all about you. And actually it's not. It's all about them. They are projecting their stuff onto you. And
now that doesn't mean that you, whoever you are, the man or the woman that is feeling this from the other person, doesn't mean you don't fuck up. Yeah. It doesn't mean that maybe you're a dick and a guy, maybe you're an ass, and you deserve to have somebody walk away from you. Yeah. But what we're talking about is less that. It's more the idea that you experience these people that will just walk away and not say a word to you. And when it doesn't happen in the beginnings of a relationship, sometimes it happens deep into a relationship. And you're like, when you're still together.
Why won't you to me? And there's a brick wall, and you cannot get past that brick wall. And you're looking at them, and you're going, "Please talk to me. I need to understand what's going on here." And they just go, "I can't talk. I'm not ready to talk about it, or I'm not going to talk about it, or it's this, it's that." And there's something else behind it, and it's so cruel. It's so cruel.
There is this thing known as the anxious avoidant dance. And its steps go like this. Number 1, the avoidant person aggressively pursues the anxious person, professing their feelings, showing high interest. Number 2, the anxious person reciprocates that interest. Number 3, the avoidant person starts to get overwhelmed with the growing level of closeness, begins to back away. Number 4, the anxious person gets triggered by the avoidant person showing up differently than they had previously and starts to overcompensate. I'm doing something wrong. I got to do better. Is the idea. Number 5, the avoidant person gets triggered by the anxious person's need for reassurance of closeness and their highly activated emotional state and pulls away even more. There's 2 more. Number 6, the anxious person gets more triggered, and on the cycle goes until finally, 7, the avoidant person disappears. Now, that's just one form. There's several other forms, but you had mentioned something that made me say, maybe I should talk about this.
Because it's triggers, isn't it? Like that sometimes, I mean, I know somebody who basically came out of a very toxic situation and a marriage, and was trying to find themselves. And there are triggers of what they've been through. Like if they see something, if they hear something, if, it brings up old unresolved issues. Yeah. And then what happens is they'll bring it on into that person, and then they go and leave them, and that person's still trying to deal with it. So I think, how do you deal with ghosting? Let's look at that. How do you deal with them? Well, some people would say the best thing you can do is let them stay a ghost, right?
Right.
Let them stay a ghost. Or do you realize that you have to take responsibility for your half of the relationship if you're in a relationship and you're being ghosted, and like that person's not going to do it. They're not going to make that decision. They're not going to open up. They're not going to talk to me. I'm going to have to do this for me.
Right. And that's got to be the final word, because you know what? We're out of here in like less than 15 seconds, 10 seconds. So everybody, we'll talk to you soon. We'll be back. We're going to stick around in the chat room for a few minutes once we go off air. So here we go. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you guys later. All right. Well, there we go, folks. We are off the radio. I'm going to take off. Pardon me for turning my camera, my whole computer system around. That's the only way I can get to my phone jack. And we are off air. Other than over on the Facebook and the YouTube channels. So we're off air over at the radio station, subspace.radio. If any of you have a question about that. And there are my children.
I have to say, Grumpy, thank you very much for that very nice compliment about I can be his sugar mama. That's a very nice compliment. Thank you.
Who asked that?
Grumpy.
He asks Rainey too, so be careful about him. Okay. Be careful about him.
We had some really interesting comments tonight, guys. Thank you so much for sharing with us about your own feelings as well about it. Because, I mean, Pearson wrote, ghosting people, especially people you were in a good friendship with, is something that my generation is way too good at doing. Absolutely spot on. And then Michelle writes, my childhood was completely toxic and dysfunctional. My mother was suicidal and only cared for my brother and sister, later diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And there's actual proof of being in a family situation and feeling completely blocked out and ignored, right?
Hi. This is Ellery.
I need to say something.
Ellery needs to say, is it proper? Is it okay to say?
True. Boundaries is very important.
Tell me first.
Very true. Where are we? I still love that, Michelle. Hurt people. That's so very true. And you're right, Steve. Words can never be taken back, ever.
Ellie has something to say to Grumpy Stack.
It's not sugar mama, it's sugar mommy.
Yeah.
Sugar mommy.
Duh, Grumpy. It's sugar mommy. So, yeah, Grumpy, says Rainey from the background. So, yeah.
Just reading. I mean, Matthew, bastard was a word used against persons who were born out of wedlock. Actually, it's really common over here in England. We say it all the time. We use it for everything.
Hey, bastard works. If it works.
It works. It does. Where are we? Scotty, will you be my daddy? Says Grumpy.
Yeah, I'll be your daddy, not your daddy. But
It's
I'll
in the
be your
music,
daddy.
right? We love
What?
the music, don't we? The music, Scotty chose the music. It's brilliant.
Yes, I did choose the music. I love the music on this.
It's like when it starts, I'm like, here it comes, here it comes.
Yep. I think it's pretty cool. I think I was watching too much Yellowstone or something when I chose that.
It works for me. Just reading down some of these comments. I will let people know, just Amanda says, I will let people know just so other know life isn't always greener.
That's
Steve,
true.
when do you really move me during the show? Wow, that doesn't happen often to me. Thank you, Steve. That's very kind of you to say. We want this show to involve people. Like, we want to talk about subjects where you can relate to it, and it's what people are going through right now in their life, and we don't always talk about it either.
Yeah.
Where else have we got down here?
Amanda Berry, I just have to ask you, over in Australia, what time is it right now? Because I was trying to figure it out in my head at the beginning of the show, just for no reason, just to talk about time zones. So what time is it there right now? I'm curious. Just post that as you see it.
Thank you, Matthew, for saying that about Hampton Court. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We enjoyed doing it last week.
9 a.m. It's 9 a.m. in Australia. So this show starts at 8 a.m. Where in Australia are you again? Sydney or Melbourne? I wanted to say Melbourne for some reason. But so it's 8 a.m. when the show starts over there. So Michelle says, I was ghosted by my mother. And my father was a captain on the Great Lakes and gone 9 months out of the year. Oh, Amanda's in Queensland. Neither Sydney nor so.
So for Michelle, I like your comments, Michelle. When you come in with them, I really like them. I can really relate to them, and you and I are so much on the same wavelength when we talk.
I think you should, if you're not already, you should go find her on Instagram and join her. She puts up some good stuff every day.
Yes, I will. So. It's interesting because when we talked about this, like what we were going to do for the show, we want to pick topics that people can join in, and that it's kind of got a bit meat on the bones, but something that you've not perhaps talked about in your show and I've not talked about in my podcast. It's like, we wanted to pick a subject, and I think this is a really big subject, and I'm sure that we're going to come back to something around the attachment styles, because in other subjects, because you're so right, Scotty, what you were talking about, all the different, and how sometimes I think I must pick avoidance in some ways, and I'm like, why do I do that? I just like, stop picking them. I want to pick the ones that are attached, not the or the secure.
Yes. We're all looking for something secure. We all want something secure. And by the way, Michelle Cannon-Free, I'm not moving away from what you said about your mom and dad and the relationship that was there. But imagine what that does. And you don't have to imagine it, Michelle. Imagine what that does to a child as they grow into their formative years, and how they learn how they're supposed to interact. Not in the sexual way do I mean this, but the intercourse between a mom and a dad, and parents and kids, and so on, and how that passes down. We always say that parents, if they don't break the chains of the abuse, that it may have gone on for generations.
Yeah.
That style of abuse keeps getting passed on and passed on and passed on, unless you stop and break the chain and say, I got to do something different. So
it's where are we? I'll just be listening. Soul Sisters, yes, we are, Michelle, for sure. I think also as well, like, I really liked your topic and what you brought up about when you're in a relationship, because you're right, there's so much about just not getting to know someone and everything else, but when you're actually in a relationship and you're lying next door to someone you love, and there's this like a massive wall between you can't get over it, you can't reach it, you've tried talking, and you feel so alone. And I know someone has said in the comments that 2 is supposed to be like a close number, but actually it's just 1. It's very alone. So I do think that all of us have either been ghosted we've ghosted someone. And I know one subject that we have talked about doing in future is the gaslighting one, because that is another one, which is another form of stuff.
Yes. Sorry, I thought you had more coming on the end of that. So, yeah, Steve, I was in the same boat as that.
Me too.
There were abuses in my childhood. You've listened to my show long enough. You know what some of that stuff is. And my mom, love her to death. She is, that's a stupid thing to say. Love my mom to death. It's a cliche we use. I don't mean to be cliche when I speak about my love for my mother. My love for my mother's strong and it's good. And my mom she just turned 80 years old. And but she was married 5 times and divorced 5 times when I was still living at home as a kid. And she knows that. She was a young mom. And there were things that happened in that home, not from her, but from others, that will forever be scars. The battle we have when we have those scars, as Michelle Canham-Free can tell you, as Wendy can tell you, as my wife could tell you, as many people I know could tell you, those scars and the things of our past, they're things that if we don't leave them where they are, we camp on them. And that's our go-to for our excuse. Oh, well, I do this because this happened or that happened or that happened to me in my youth. The same with you, Steve. I'm not excluding what you say. I don't think divorce would become so accustomed to it. I don't think because we've come accustomed to it that it's something that is good for kids. It's not good for families, but it's sometimes things families have to go through. I get that. I understand that part. The people in the midst of it. It's never a fun, enjoyable thing. And if divorce is fun, enjoyable for someone, then that somebody's got some issues, especially when you've got kids involved. It's always a heartache. It's always something. It's always a burden.
I think if you're going to do it, it depends. You both have to be very civil, and that's not always easy. My parents divorced when I was 7, and I really have some memories that are not great, and I also have some memories where it was trying to be covered up, because when you're young, you have no really idea about what divorce is or anything like that. But I also know people that have had divorce, such as myself. And although it was painful in the beginning, actually, as it went through, we were good. It was a good divorce. It was as amicable. And sometimes divorce is such a blessing because it's freedom. Sure. It's a fresh start. You're both free to start again. And life is all about, life's all about making the most of it. It's too short to waste in a situation which is not fulfilling you as a person.
This is very true. This is very true. As much pain as that might cause you or the other person or both, sometimes that situation isn't something that can ever be rectified. And why would you want to stay in it?
Yeah.
So I get that. And that doesn't mean there's not going to be pain for those people, but man. And so I was thinking of something in particular with this whole thing of people that have pain. Oh, back when I was in ministry days, we talked about divorce a lot because it happened to people in the church. And obviously, I always used to say Christians are humans too. They do stupid things and they fuck up, and they also go through divorces and other things. But the whole issue of divorce with kids, that's where it becomes delicate. And you have to weigh out, is this better for the kids? Is this worse for the kids? I read a book once, and it was a counseling book written by a psychologist that talked about, it was called The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce. And he was focusing on the kids. There's an unexpected legacy that we bequeath our children when we make that choice. And sometimes that choice is necessary. Sometimes that choice is arbitrary. Sometimes that choice is based on good reasoning. Sometimes that choice is based on selfish reasoning. But whatever it is, when it happens, it always does, whether it's a proper and a good divorce or a bad, wicked, nasty, evil divorce, however you want to categorize them, they always affect kids. And so the parent's job, because that legacy is what we bequeath them, that parent's job is to do everything in their power to raise those kids to understand, to understand what is right and what is good. There was I was divorced from I've got 3 older kids, as you know, Wendy, and many of my listeners know. My twins are 30, my girls, and my son is 21, and they are the product of a mom that I eventually divorced her. She had done it 4 times, had thrown divorce at me.
Wow.
You know this story about me already, and finally there was a point that she was a good-looking woman. She was cosmopolitan. She was on her game, except she was an alcoholic, kind of hidden alcoholic, and all of this stuff affected our family deeply. I would come home from work when I worked in the ad agency business. I'd be home about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and there's my 2 little girls, age 4 and 5, and they're playing on the floor in the living room, and mom's passed out drunk on the sofa. And so I'm not justifying anything. I'm saying there were issues, and I tried to rectify those. She had affairs, and we reconciled even after those. And I said, our kids deserve for us to fight for this relationship. And I did that for so many years that there was a point where I said, I can't do this anymore. And I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to divorce you, and I'm going to sue for custody of my children, my 3 kids. And my twin daughters were, 8 at the time, 9. And my son was 1. And I'm rounding all the edges on this, but I ended up being given sole custody of my children. And it's not because of my sterling virtue and my character. It's because I think that the judge saw that those kids needed to be with me and not their mom.
I remember my parents, my dad was always, I can't actually say I've had many conversations with him, but I remember when my mum gave my dad the divorce papers, and he said, and she said, you got a choice. You can either work at this marriage, or you can stay with the woman that you're with. And this is what I'm saying is we have to be honest with each other. Mm-hmm. Whether you're in a friendship, work situation, dating, marriage, whatever, speak the truth. Own
Absolutely.
your truth. Take your power as much as you can, as much courage you've got in your hand, and say, for instance, using it as a relationship situation, and they don't want to be with you anymore, and it's like, oh my God, how am I going to tell them that they're not for me or whatever? And you just say, you're a great person, but this is not for me. And I've changed, or we've grown apart, or I don't love you anymore, but I still care about you. Mm-hmm. Free yourself, because when you just cut them dead, when you don't have that conversation with them, you damage a person, and they take that scar inwardly.
Yeah.
And it's like, and why do you think people end up in counseling situations? There are people that have been so damaged by being ignored and rejected by someone who means so much to them. They've become obsessed with it, that they've become, it's become, why? I need answers. And why won't you tell me? And then they start stalking them, and then they start chasing them. And the person who's running from them is not saying it. You must take your power as best as you can in your hand and be brave and say, this is how I feel.
Yep.
And that's all you can do. And unfortunately, we're all guilty of not doing that at times.
I've known so many people that will say, and a woman comes to mind, so I'm going to give the example as talking about a woman, but I've seen men do the same thing. They know they're going to end their marriage, and like, I just can't face him anymore. I just can't talk to him, and I have to. Will you go do it for me? And I'm like, no, that
Yeah.
is not my responsibility.
Mm.
I'll help you. I'll uphold you. I got people, friends that can uphold you and help you through this crisis. But
Yeah.
you know what? You're the one that's got to. You got to buck up. I tell her, and I've told this to guys too. You got to buck up and do the right thing.
But a lot of the core is fear.
Yes, it's all fear.
I'm frightened to say something. I don't know how I'm going to react if I say it. I don't know the words to say. So I know I'm going to say bugger all to them, and I'm just going to leave them to think about it. It's fear, and it's like, thanks very much for that. As a counselor, I saw many people that were just like, you don't talk to me anymore. You don't say this to me. What's going on in your brain? What's going on in your mind? And then it comes to someone that you may have just met. They've love bombed you. They've love bombed you completely. And they've got you to lower the wall and defenses. And then they just go, oh no, like you say, avoidant, oh no, too deep, too involved, or I've seen something that triggers me, or I've seen something that reminds me of something, and they run. And
that's it.
And as I said in the series show number one, Bob Marley said the most worst thing you can ever do in life is love someone with have no intention of loving them.
Right.
And that is cruel. And it's so
love somebody with no intention of loving them.
Tonight that we've helped somebody out there to at least face up to someone, or at least grow the courage to do it, because it does take courage to say something to somebody.
It does.
It takes a lot of courage, and with all due respect, it takes a lot of courage to say to someone, this is how I feel, you're not for me.
And you know what? Like I've said to all my kids, now not all my kids are grown. I've got the 7 and the 10-year-old, a 13-year-old boy, and I'm starting working with him. But my older kids, I said, you know what? I said, it's this easy. Stand tall, roll your shoulders back, chin up, and speak your truth.
Yeah.
Speak the truth. I don't
Stand
like
in
your truth. I hate your truth. That's too woke to me. Speak the truth. Speak the truth in love. Deliver it, even if it's it's hard to do. Life's full of hard things to do, and one of them you got to do is not leave that other person feeling empty, bewildered.
Mm.
So you get up there and you go, look, here it is.
And don't you think, Scotty, you have respect, even if they whack you in the face with something, or regardless of the situation, you have respect for them for taking that courage and saying it, right?
Yep.
I might not like what you're telling me, but I damn well respect you for saying it to me.
Yeah. Thanks for telling me. Thanks for being open. Thanks for being honest. So,
because otherwise, like for instance, where I was concerned, it was kind of like, what? Like what? And I'm an inquisitive person. It's like sometimes you want to have an answer to something,
right?
And I don't like having no answers to things sometimes. And it's like, just say
I'm that way too. I'm just like you in that.
Just say it. Just goddamn say it. Write it down. And actually, and then also the ones you hate the most are the ones that go, well, I'm not sure what I want right now. I'm not sure where I am. It's not you, it's me. And what's the other one? I'm sort of in my own head, or I confuse myself, or it's this, or it's that. And it's like, how many bloody excuses are you going to make before you actually turn around and say the absolute truth, which is, I don't want this, or this is what I feel.
And all you got to do is flip the tables a little bit and put yourself in that person's shoes.
Just say
it. If you must leave me bereft, at least do not leave me bewildered.
Exactly.
And
very
so that's a job we all have. And hopefully nobody's in those situations at the moment where they've got to make those decisions. But we all face them one time or another.
right now. I do know quite a few people in that. Matthew,
Yeah.
he made a
Me
legend
too.
of his music. Don't worry about a thing, because yeah, that's true. Michelle, you are absolutely right. Otherwise, we are left without closure. And sometimes our closure, and this is the hardest lesson that I've had to learn, is us taking the power and going, I can't get an answer. You won't talk to me. I can't do anything. So I've got to take my power, and I'm going to have to do this.
This topic right here that Steve is saying right here in the chat room, that's a whole nother topic for another time. But he said, my mom never said anything nice about my dad ever. Now, we don't know what kind of person his dad was, but we all know people in situations. One of the worst things that parents, let's put it this way, one of the worst things that couples who once loved each other enough to get married, who once loved each other to be naked together and roll in the sheets and take showers and together and go shopping and mow the lawn and all these things together, who have suddenly hated each other, but they got kids in it. The worst thing a parent can do to their kid is to show their contempt for the other parent.
Yes.
Unless there are exceptions, obviously. You know, if mom or dad is a contemptual, is that the right word? Contemptual? Somebody who deserves contempt, maybe legally, morally, whatever it might be. Those are about the only times where you can say, look, your dad, your mom, they've done some awful things. We've got to leave them. You can still love your dad. I will tell you this. I'll give you a little anecdote. You've heard this. My listeners have heard this before. Once when I was, we were still in, we were out of the custody battle. I gained custody of my 3 kids. My twin daughters were 9. My son was 1. And we were transferring in a parking lot, putting kids in my car. The girls were in the car, and my son was in his car seat, and 1-year-old baby, going to dad's house. And my ex-wife was vicious. And that doesn't matter what it was about. I don't even remember what it was about. But we're talking outside the car, and I remember I was holding my ground on something. No, I wasn't yelling. There wasn't a fight. She was vicious and ranting. And I said, no, you got to stop. That's enough. And she spit in my face and then ran off, jumped in her car, and tore out of the parking lot. And I remember getting in the car, and my daughters, I think it was Abby, who said to me, I've never seen anything like that happen to anyone, even on TV, getting spit in the face. And what was my option at that point? What could I do at that point? What were the choices that came rushing into my head? I'm not trying to paint a glowing picture of me. I'm trying to say I was offered choices right there in my own conscience. Yep. And I thought I could really speak ill of that bitch on wheels of a woman. I could have done that. I could have used those words with my children. Instead, I said to my kids, I said, Mom's a little mixed up right now, isn't she? And I said, you know what? Let's just say a little prayer for Mom, that she has some grace and she can feel better. And I was in ministry back at this time too. I was just coming out of ministry. And so those were the first things off my tongue. And I took off my glasses and wiped the spit off of them. And we said a little prayer for Mom. Now, I don't say that to say, look at me, look at how holier than thou I was. I say, I was offered choices. Do I speak ill of their mom, contemptuously of their mom, even when she does contemptuous things? Or do I try to explain to my children, everybody's got their day. This is not Mom's day today. She's bothered by all this. Let's think of her, keep her in grace in your head. And I spent many years doing that, until finally I didn't have to do it anymore when all my kids were grown up. And it was like a weight off of my shoulders. But we're all offered with those choices. And Steve, when he said, my mom never said anything nice about my dad, I thought, you don't have to even be married. You can be divorced and still not have to say nasty things about the other parent.
Well, it's a choice. Everything we do in life, we have a choice pretty much with. And it's about you got a choice to go down one road or the other. And I know a young girl, she's quite an inspiration to me, and she's so classy the way that she comes out with stuff, and she's gone through a lot of trauma in her life. And it's like, if you've got something to say to somebody, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. And once you say it, you can't take it back. And I've had, when you call people names, when you do horrible things to them, it says more about you as a person than about the person you're actually saying it about. So if you're acting in that way, you're like, for instance, if you're in a toxic relationship or a violent relationship or whatever you want to put it, it shows more about you. Like I when I was in my toxic abusive relationship, they were a drinker, and they would drink all the time, and they would say the most horrendous
yeah.
And you think to yourself, oh my God, right? It
wow,
really hurt, right? And then because next morning when they're completely, I never said that, I never did that, and I would feel like I wanted to run around with a tape recorder and go, do you want to listen? And sometimes I think people say things and they don't take responsibility for their actions. And this is what I'm saying with ghosting, or not having the courage to say things. Take responsibility. You cared enough to have a friendship, have a relationship, or start chatting to that person or whatever. And work situation's a bit difficult. That's a bit different because you are in that scenario for, when you're working.
Right.
But I do think, Scotty, we have about this much free will in our life. What kind of, you may not want to be with someone. You may not want to be friends with someone anymore. What kind of, I don't want to say image, but legacy do you want to leave with them? Memory do you want to leave with them? That you were a good person, and no matter what, you stood your ground and spoke your truth, but you were fair and decent about it.
I didn't fill your car tank with sugar or water. I didn't leave you breaking your stuff. I left you as a decent person. Yeah.
Or you ran them down and made cheap shots.
You mean literally?
Yeah.
Run them down.
Oh, please. So I think that, with the whole topic that we picked tonight, I think a lot of people, just by looking in the comments, they can completely relate to what we were chatting about.
I think so. I think you're right. So, but, and I hate to say it, we probably need to go. And all of you, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So, because we gotta shut down for the night. So, Wendy, you sit over there in the wings, and I'll sit there in the wings. I'll talk to you a little bit when we're off air. And let's say our goodbyes, everybody. Thank you for being here. Live long and prosper. And we'll see you next Tuesday night. Bye.